It's time for our lesson again. Look at the board. Try to see all the examples and try to see all of the definitions for our phrases that we're going to do today. Where's the teacher? Right here. Okay, hey everyone. Today we're going to be doing a phrases review. Now, when we're talking about phrases, there are many different kinds of phrases out there, but we're going to be reviewing some of the ones you've already learned and put them in one longer video. So today we're going to be talking about prepositional phrases, we're going to talk about gerund phrases, and then we're going to talk about participial phrases. All of these are phrases that you have already learned. If you don't remember them, you can kind of find our old videos in our old playlists, and that could help you as well. But putting it all together, let's talk about them. So what is a phrase? Let's start there. A phrase is a group of words that go together as one idea. That's the important part. These words, they all work together to form one idea. You can't just pick random words from everywhere and put them together, because that probably won't make sense, right? If I say something like tuna, cashew, computer, those are groups of words, but they don't go together. There's no such thing as a tuna, cashew, computer yet. But they just generally don't go together. The words have to fit. So make sure they're groups of words that go together as one idea. Another part about phrases, they are missing either a subject, a noun, or a verb. So if you have a phrase that has, well, it wouldn't be called a phrase. If you have a subject and a verb, you can call that a clause, but the phrase is missing one. It could have a noun, doesn't have a verb. It could have a verb, but it doesn't have a noun, right? That is a phrase. It's missing one of those two parts. The next thing we need to talk about is, what is a preposition? A preposition, these are words that give more information about a noun, okay? So they're a little bit different from adjectives. I know we say that adjectives describe nouns, but prepositions, it's not really describing the noun, it's just giving you a little bit of extra information. And that is why we use a plus symbol when we are talking about prepositions. So what kind of extra information are we getting from prepositions? Well, they're telling you answers to certain questions. Who, what, when, where, and how. More commonly, it's when and where that we're going to be answering with prepositions. The three big prepositions that we commonly use are in, at, and on. Those are very often used in sentences and speaking. There are plenty of other ones too. But we're going to be looking at some of those simple ones when we use our examples. So prepositions, they answer questions like who, what, when, where, how. Prepositional phrases. So a phrase is a group of words. Prepositions give you more information. Put it together. So prepositional phrases, they start with a preposition, but they have more words. At the end of the prepositional phrase, you are going to be ending with a noun. What kind of noun is that? Because you have subject nouns in a sentence, you have object nouns in a sentence, direct objects, indirect objects. But in a prepositional phrase, the noun in a prepositional phrase is a object of preposition. That's what we call it. Sometimes we just say OP. Now when you put it together, the prepositional phrase, we have some examples here, and I want you to remember this last part. This is also very important. They can be removed from a sentence. A prepositional phrase is, because it's just a plus symbol, it's just adding stuff to a sentence, you could just take it out and you still have your sentence, right? Make sense? So you can play around with it. You can move it around in a sentence, you can take it out, and you still have a complete thought. I like to think about pizza this way. What is your basic pizza? For me, it's a cheese pizza. It's just the bread, the sauce, the cheese. That's your sentence. But if you're going to put some toppings on it, those are your prepositions. You're just changing the pizza and making a little bit more, right, information about the pizza. All right, but that's just one way to think about it, not the best way. So here's our examples. The girl at the park was riding her bike. There's a lot of nouns here. If you look at here, the girl, this is a noun, it's your subject noun. At the park is your prepositional phrase. At, our plus symbol, starts with a preposition. At the park, these words go together. This is one idea, and this is your object of preposition. Park is a noun, but not your subject or your object. So at the park, it's going to be answering one of these questions. The girl. Where is the girl? At the park. Oh, so this is telling me more about where she is. All right? The girl at the park, what is she doing? Was riding her bike. Now, was riding, because you have the be verb plus the verb ing, this is the past progressive tense, this is your verb together. If there was no be verb, then we would call that a gerund, which we'll get to. So, the girl at the park was riding her bike. This bike is a noun, but we're using it as the direct object of what is she doing. She's riding what? Her bike. Okay, so this is your object. In the prepositional phrase, though, it's your object of the preposition. Okay? And this is answering the question, where is the girl? Next, I left my homework. Please don't do that, but I left my homework. I is your subject, homework is your object of your sentence, and you could kind of stop here. I left my homework. That's a sentence. That's fine. But you want to give more information. I left my homework on my desk at home. Oh no, that would be terrible. Don't do that. But on my desk. On is your preposition. On my desk is your prepositional phrase. Desk is your object of preposition. And what is this talking about? I left my homework where? On my desk. Where? At home. At home is still talking about your homework. On my desk is still talking about homework. I can take one or both out. My sentence could be, I left my homework at home. Or, I left my homework on my desk. Or you can just say, I left my homework. I don't need these. It's still a complete thought. And you can keep adding more prepositional phrases to your sentence. I left my homework on my desk at home in the drawer under my notebook. Right? And you have all these prepositional phrases, and they're each telling me about my homework. Right? It's not, this does not have to connect exactly with this. You can take one out, you can take both out, but you don't need to have these go together to make the sentence make sense. Okay? So again, phrases, groups of words that go together, one idea. Prepositions, words that give you more information, answering questions like who, what, when, where, and how. Prepositional phrases begin with a preposition, end with a noun, which is called the object of preposition. You can take out the prepositional phrases, and they still work. Now, let's move on to our next review, talking about gerunds. So now it's time to get into our gerund phrases review. Now remember, the phrase doesn't change. A phrase is a group of words that go together, one idea. It's missing a subject or a verb. So one or the other. It has a noun, doesn't have a verb, has a verb, doesn't have a noun. That part of your phrase review will never change. But now we're talking about gerunds and not prepositions. So what is a gerund? Let's start there. A gerund is a word formed from a verb, but not a verb. That word is now going to be used as a noun. It's always used as a noun. So if you have a verb ing, and that's how you make a gerund. It's a little bit different from a participle. We'll get to that. But when you have a verb ing used as a noun, then we call that a gerund. Okay? So it's not a verb. It looks like one, right? And this is why when we talk about gerunds, what kind of nouns are they? Gerund nouns are used as idea nouns because we have person, places, things, and ideas for the 4 different kinds of nouns. But gerund phrases and gerund, these are just idea nouns. Because you're taking a verb, you're taking an action or a state of being, and you're trying to figure out, how do I turn this action into an idea? And that's why we have gerunds as idea nouns. So what is a gerund phrase? Just like a prepositional phrase, gerund phrases begin with a gerund and they end, right, often, usually, with a prepositional phrase. They don't have to, right, but for the most part, a lot of times when you see a gerund phrase, you'll have the gerund plus a preposition, and then those words go together to form the gerund phrase. But you don't have to have it that way. We'll look at an example of that in a little bit. So we'll see both types. When you are using the gerund, again, we're talking about used as an idea noun. Even though you have many words, all those words together is one noun. So let's look at an example. First one, swimming at the beach is usually safe. starting with a gerund, with the prepositional phrase, at the beach. But this goes together. It's the idea of swimming at the beach. This is all of this is your subject. It's many words, one noun. So swimming at the beach is usually safe. And that's fine. Here we're using it as your subject in your sentence. Your second sentence, Brian enjoys studying English at IQ. Instead of using it as your subject, because Brian is your subject here, enjoys is your verb, studying English at IQ is your direct object, because I'm telling you he enjoys what? Studying English at IQ. This one's a little tricky, because I could just say studying English, because that starts with a gerund, and it also has another word. They go together, and there is no verb. It's just noun, studying English. This could be your gerund phrase. So at IQ could be part of a separate prepositional phrase. But then the sentence meaning would change. If I just said Brian enjoys studying English, that's fine. But maybe he enjoys studying English only at IQ. If that's the case, this has to stay together. If he just enjoys studying English, then I don't need this part. They're two separate ideas. But remember, they're one idea. I'm using this as he only enjoys studying English at IQ. Make sense? So if they're separate thoughts, you can say prepositional phrase, gerund phrase. If these thoughts have to go together, then it's one long gerund phrase used as your direct object. Our last sentence that we have, his interest in studying English grew. So we had a subject example of a gerund phrase. We have a direct object example of a gerund phrase. Here is an example for object of preposition. So we have his interest grew is your sentence. Here is the prepositional phrase in studying English. But you're starting with a preposition, the words that go together. Studying English, studying is your gerund. English, studying English is your gerund phrase. But these two words are acting as the object of preposition. It's a little bit tricky, this one, which is why a lot of times we're going to just talk about gerund phrases as subjects in your sentence, but there are many different ways that we can use them in the different parts of the sentences where we have nouns. Okay, so subject, object preposition, direct objects. So this is your gerund review, and we have one more to go, because gerunds and participles kind of look the same. They are verb ing, but gerunds are not participles. And we'll get into that next. We're almost done. I promise. Well, a few more minutes. But here we go. Phrases review, going into participial phrases. We did prepositional phrases, we did gerund phrases. Now when we did gerund phrases, what I told you is gerund phrases, because of the way that they look, verb ing, that's the present participle. And the present participle is verb ing, so they look the same, right? They're exactly the same. Verb ing for gerund, verb ing for present participle for gerund, and participial phrase is also going to be verb ing. The difference is how we use it. That's the difference. So what is a participle? A participle is a word formed from a verb, but it's acting as an adjective. A gerund is a word formed from a verb, but is being used as a noun. But in the present participle, because it's verb ing, and because gerunds are also verb ing, they look exactly the same. It's just, again, how do we use it? And we'll see an example of that later on. When we talk about the past participle, this one is a little bit tricky because we have regular and irregular verbs because we're taking the form from a verb. But if it's a present participle, it doesn't matter regular, irregular, it's just going to be verb ing. But because it's the past participle, it does matter if it's a regular verb or irregular verb. A regular verb, there's only two forms of the verb you have to remember. We have the present, right, the simple present, let's say play. And then we have the simple past, it's played, ed. But then the past participle is still going to be played, ed. The simple past and the past participle look the same. It's just like the simple past. But when you have the past participle of an irregular verb, it's gonna look weird usually because it's not going to be the same. It's usually different from the simple past. So if you have write, the simple past is wrote, The past participle is not wrote. The past participle is written. So there's three forms of that verb that you have to know. However, even though you know write, wrote, written, write and wrote are verbs, written is not a verb unless we're using it in the progressive tense or the perfect tense. So for written, because it's a past participle, in the perfect tense of verbs we have plus PP. So you could say had written and then it's a verb again, but just written without the had or the have or the has is not a verb, it's an adjective. Same thing for the present tense. You can have running, right, as an adjective or as a gerund, but as a noun. However, if you're going to make it a verb, you need to have the be verb. So is running is a verb. No is, no be, just running could be a noun, could be an adjective. So just remember this little thing. If you're going to use the participles as part of a verb, using it really as a verb, you need to have either have plus past participle or be plus present participle. Verb usage. But in the phrase, we're not using it as verbs, we're using them as adjectives. So a participial phrase, just like a gerund phrase, begins with a participle. At the end of it, you have other words that go together to form one idea. Our first example, taken by surprise, Brian enjoyed his birthday party. Here, taken, is it a present participle or is it a past participle? It's a past participle because we have take, took, taken, right? And so here, taken by surprise is an adjective describing Brian. Because Brian, he had his birthday. He thought everyone forgot. He was going home, he's sad, opens the door, everyone, surprise! And he's like, right? Taken by surprise, Brian enjoyed it. I can move it because it's an adjective. I could say Brian, taken by surprise, enjoyed his birthday party, right? Because the participial phrase is used as an adjective, you can move them in the sentence, right? To put them near the noun that they're trying to describe. Next, this sentence is a little bit tricky. My dog enjoys barking at cars driving by the house. It's a complicated sentence because we have many nouns. We have dog as your subject, and then we have barking at cars. Cars could be the object of preposition. In fact, it is in this first example, because barking at cars driving by the house, that could be one long gerund phrase, because it has to be a specific kind of car. So barking at cars, all cars? No, just the cars driving by my house. So this, as a participial phrase, is describing the cars. Does that make sense? Right? It's describing the object of my preposition. Because I could be, because maybe my dog, when I take it to the parking lot, I don't know why I would take it to a parking lot, but it could see lots of cars and not bark. But maybe the dog is barking only at the cars that are driving by the house. This is describing the cars, not the dog. But if I'm separating these ideas, I could say my dog enjoys barking at cars, and then driving by the house could also be used as another gerund phrase. If I keep them back here together, I could say my dog enjoys driving by the house, barking at cars. Gerund phrases. But if I move this to the front, if I say driving by the house, my dog enjoys barking at cars, then driving by the house is talking about my dog, right? And that's describing the dog, so you have a cartoon dog driving a car. And in that case, this is a participial phrase describing dog. But at the end of the sentence, this, barking at cars, driving by the house, I'm using it, driving by the house, to talk about this long gerund phrase, which cars? What specific cars? If I separate them, then it's just two gerund phrases. So remember, because gerund phrases and participial phrases, they look the same if they are using the present participle, it's tricky sometimes. Is it a gerund? Is it a participle as an adjective? You just have to look in the sentence and tell me what is it describing. Or is it just going to be a noun, right? Adjective or noun? That's the trick question. Let's review. Phrases review. What is a phrase? A phrase is a group of words that go together as one idea. It is missing either a subject or a verb. What do prepositions do? Prepositions add information or answer questions about a noun, such as where, when, or how, place, time, or manner. What is a prepositional phrase? A prepositional phrase starts with a preposition and ends with a noun. The noun is called the object of preposition. What can you do with prepositional phrases in a sentence? You can remove the prepositional phrase and still have a complete sentence. What is a gerund? How is it used in a sentence? A gerund is a word formed from a verb, but always used as a noun. It looks like verb ing. What is a gerund phrase? How is it used in a sentence? A gerund phrase begins with a gerund and is often combined with a prepositional phrase. It is always used as an idea noun. How can we use a gerund phrase in a sentence? It can be used as the subject, direct object, or object of preposition in a sentence. What is a participle? How is it used in a sentence? A participle is a word formed from a verb, but used as an adjective. How is a present participle and gerund used differently? A present participle is used as an adjective, and a gerund is used as a noun. They both look the same. What does a past participle look like? If using a regular verb, past participles end in ed, just like the verb in the simple past tense. If using an irregular verb, past participles usually look different from the same verb in the simple past tense. What does a present participle look like? A present participle looks like a verb ing. What is a participial phrase? A participial phrase is a group of words that begin with a participle and is used as an adjective.